Okay. Last night was another day. A statement that Alan Watts would say is like biting your own teeth. And the only way you can bite your own teeth is if it's actually outside of your teeth, outside of your jaw. I wanted to speak about atemporal conception today. And atemporal means beyond time. It doesn't relate to time. I feel we are creatures that, in order to survive, have engaged in a sort of massive costume game. And what does this mean? That this doesn't only mean that the society and the average consciousness of the person is just the alertness is to the self. It means we are dressing up an ideology as creatures, and we're functioning with an individualism that immediately starts from the inner realms. A lot of life is not actually happening in front of your eyes. Which is an interesting point. So many people suffer over who they are, who they want to be, or who they have been, but the who is never physical. You can't, take your idea of self and put it on the table. So most suffering is internal, I find. Excuse me. Last night was another day. Language gives us multidimensional positioning. I feel that language is a technology that allows us to be many versions of ourselves before we actually make an action. I feel language is giving us multidimensionality behind our eyes. Just the fact that we can divide things, we can classify things, the fact that we can look at an object and it has a subjective counterpart. The object is a subject behind your eyes. In front of your eyes, it's an object. Behind your eyes, it's a subject. How interesting. And so what's behind the eyes and what is subjective, I find it's momentary. It's as if we have access to images. It's as if we have eyes in two dimensions. One, a biological sight, then a sight where all the senses that is received are kind of being processed, kind of the mind's eye again. The eyes of the mind. The sight of the mind. When I look at time, of course, in many talks I've kind of discussed it, that it's kind of like you can see it. Plato saw it as a moving image of eternity. Albert Einstein saw it as something that kind of stops things from happening all at once. So, time is again, one can say, one of those costumes that you wear. Time is, it's a layer upon something that's already there. Many nights I've sat here, spoken about language, spoken about how language is the skin of the ego, how the world's meaning is being filtered through how we have adopted language as our reality, as real. And I can say I've always wondered how that next step happens, because on an evolutionary view, the next step is us becoming consciously the world. So we are consciously a part of the world now. I feel the next evolutionary state is to, in some sense, become the world. So it's kind of strange. I think the way out of karma is not conceivable. It's not a concept. It's not a related. That means in that state, there's literally no concept of karma. It's pure being. It's being before it ever could do anything. I remember in one talk like a year ago, I called it empty seeing. I had this experience, guys. I'll share it with you. Where I was living in Toronto. This is like, I don't know, I think maybe 2 years ago. There was an ashram, there was this Vishnu temple near my house, and it had this giant Hanuman statue. And Hanuman is, in some sense, it's a deity with the face of a monkey. And this deity is known to have stolen the sun as if it was a mango or something. And so there was this giant golden Hanuman statue in this Vishnu temple in Toronto. And I remember I find myself going there, and I wasn't raised in an Indian family, I was raised in a Persian family. And anyways, I felt like kind of, I would sometimes go there. They had this silence, and it was kind of like free to go. And I would go in, and they had this kind of space where they had it was the shrine room, and it was this silence with these windows uniquely placed, so the lighting of the room was unique. And I remember I went there and I sat. I sat in front of it and I was staring at directly a statue of Rama. Rama. And as I was just looking at Rama, just straight, as if like my gaze just single pointed attention, it was as if for a second I couldn't look away from the statue or something. And I was just looking at the statue, and there I experienced a moment where the word empty seeing emerged in my reality, in my inner realms. And it was a moment where I was literally asking myself, what is there here? And that question hit me to a point where I noticed that we are intelligent potentially as space. We just have no conceivable way to define it. That means, believe it or not, for the first time there has come a need to develop an invisible language, and I feel the next step is geometry. I remember just sitting there in that moment, and there was no longer me, there was no longer a statue, there was nothing, it was just sight. I just noticed it's at the rawest level of human existence. It's just an existential awareness to the human form. And really, that means the mind can be way more advanced than how it is being utilized currently. Right now, if somebody came up to me and said, all right, Mr. Within, what do you think is the most advanced thing people are doing here on this planet? Or what's an example of the most kind of advanced communication you've seen? The most obvious example of advanced communication would be an open valve. It would be an open valve. And sometimes I've seen it. An open valve means you found an unconditional inspiration. And unconditional inspiration means you notice a mystery that in some sense can't have an answer in time. There came a moment where I did ask myself if there is a part of my energetic being that has never changed. And space was the common denominator between every memory. Every memory I've have, the link between it is the awareness. You see, it's as if we're experiencing the moment in two ways, as a shape and not as a shape. So you have the memory of what you were aware of, your awareness, and I think you also have the design and shape of a self. So when I remember things, it's like I'm either remembering something that was of a design, that means something was changing to me, to the self, or the world. So I would categorize my memories as memories where I first see myself, then I see the world, or memories where I first see the world, then I see myself. In my dream states, I've experienced enough kind of altered states to be comfortable with attention. Kind of life made me uh, get acquainted with the silence behind my eyes in a kind of strange way. There was I think it was 2011 actually. I would go into this intense sleep paralysis. What that would mean is that the moment I would sleep, there was suddenly I would wake up, but I couldn't move my body. And this would happen so many times that after some point it wasn't even intense anymore. I would just wake up in my body. And what you do in sleep paralysis is most people just try to raise their hands, lift their hands. You know, like, oh, it's like your body's heavy. Now there's a scientific explanation for what's going on, and there's a metaphysical explanation. The scientific explanation is your body produces a chemical, so when you dream of running, you don't just start running in your bed. You know, that's the scientific explanation. The other explanation is that your mind has woken up earlier than your body, and your mind is not primarily relevant to just your body. Do you know? And so the way I found out you really handle that sleep paralysis is you gotta breathe. I just looked it up online, and there was some person who had found a way solution, and the person was like, when you're in sleep paralysis, just inhale, exhale. And I was like, that's it. That's the thing. You in some sense bring your attention to what you have control over, and then suddenly it animates the whole system. So what that means is when you are in sleep paralysis, what happens is so yeah, guys, in what do you call it? In sleep paralysis, and it's not just in sleep paralysis. One day you're gonna realize the breath is you can pilot your attention with your breathing. I would tell you if somebody told me like what's the best thing someone can do for a meditative exercise, which is pretty much the root of all meditation, it's just being aware and then just breathing. So, for example, in the sleep paralysis situation, you just pay attention to your breathing and you wake up instantly. I'm not joking, you wake up instantly. I've tried this a couple times. And the thing is about sleep paralysis is it's a psychological push. Okay, so the mind is still reacting like a dream in reality. So that's why there's the intense. The body is an opportunity to study what the mind can be. It's the basic ground. It's as if you know how many beings don't have bodies to even comprehend their minds. The human being is in an interesting position. There's a story of Rama where somebody comes and asks Rama, "Why do we have to work, man? Why do we have to work for enlightenment? Like, you serious? You know?" And Rama looks at him and says, "You don't realize the privilege of human life. That in lesser dimensions, the beings are not conscious to ask the question, and in higher dimensions, the beings are getting the answers too quickly. Oh, it is only in human life where there is a balance of the question and answer, where it can lead to the suffering that eventually you will see the reverse of." You see, life is about endurance. You got to think about it this way, and I don't know why nobody talks about this, but life is happening. It's oscillating. It's happening rhythmically. We are rhythmically existing to ourselves. It's like that moment where, I mean, just think about it for a second, right? Everything we see can connect to another image. What does that mean? That means you can look at any object and give it a name. You know, I could look at my mouse pad and like my mouse, computer mouse, and call it, I don't know. Uh, I don't know. What's a famous like mouse in history? I could call it Jerry, okay? That means I could instantly link the subjective realm. So when it comes to connecting thoughts to objects, because there's a freedom of the unconditionalness of the private room of your imagination, of your inner realms. I'm just saying there can be a subjective association, usually relating subjects to objects. There's a lot of freedom there. Just like I can visualize like an object floating in there, and how come when I imagine an object, gravity doesn't act up on it? No. JH, it is instant. It's just that I had an image which I didn't have a name for. You gotta understand, I'm bilingual. So sometimes when I'm giving a talk, I'm also the image of the idea, the linguistic. Like I sometimes see two words to one word. Okay, but I'm telling you, it's evocational. Somebody tells you like, you know, um, like imagine a peach. Does that not bring an image? Now, if you don't know what a peach is, I mean, sure, it could. The sound could evoke some image, you know. Maybe you know what the word speech means, but you don't know what a peach is, and somebody says the word peach to you, and you suddenly you see an image of somebody giving a speech, for example. Do you know it's a sort of sound correlation? Even the sound of it can evoke. That means imagine in how many of your memories you've heard a sound or a decibel range that you have also heard in other memories. So I'm telling you, the mind is multidimensional. Like literally right now, we're saying we're bodies, and we say a person has either a presence of mind or they are caught into a personality, you know? Guys, we're bringing peaches into this, you know? I don't know, guys. After some point, I feel like we're all just swimming through images that we've been exposed to. I'm telling you, you don't know how much cyclical movement there is in the inner realms. Like I'm someone that's suggesting definitely there's a sort of seasons experience cyclicalness to the inner realms, okay? The only things that don't change are things that were never shaped. So that's what you find, I find. So there is this kind of thing. I kind of looked at it and I was like, what is this? That many people in their life, they've kind of looked at past lives and they've wanted to find their past life. And I was like, what's the point if it's an infinite regression? That means imagine you were someone curious about your future self or your past self. You'd see, what if it goes endless? So the Buddha is kind of giving us a riddle. Buddhism and many mystical traditions, they're like, how can eternity be? How can you be eternally? How can an eternal being be trapped in an incarnation cycle? Do you see? It's our relationship with time, and it's fair to say that some things have never happened on this earth, and if they happen, they can totally change the outcome. I think the best thing is we should endlessly overpopulate. You know why? Because people, I mean, first of all, we'll build sky cities to handle the room problem. But I'm saying, let me tell you why. Because the more individuals there are in a system, the more individuals look at the system. Okay, that means there's more versions of the system existing in the air. I often feel that great ideas are everywhere. They just have to be introduced to the world of sound. Technically, last night was another day. But you see, the word day becomes a pun there. I don't know. So much of this life is just seeking order in chaos and then seeing the order returns to chaos. And then you even try to be on the side of chaos and you're like, chaos doesn't even know what it's doing. Only order knows what it's doing. You know, chaos is more, you can say a person becomes chaotic when they lose sight of the gentleness of the outer realms. When you stop looking through someone else's eyes, like I kind of see this in like when I was in the subway and there was this kind of intoxicated father kind of talking to his kid very intensely, but the father, I could totally see how the father felt he was being normal, but the kid was getting a bit startled, right? And so that's what I'm talking about, the inner realms and the outer realms. Even people, when you see it, like I was like, what is this? That people change. And I noticed, guys, we are literally, our psychologies are countercultural reactions. What does that mean? That means look at your life and look at what information came to you and look at what decision you made. Information that came to you before you could perceive it, you deviate from. Information that you perceive that comes to you, you can accept. Guys, think about it. We can only give words to what we see, so our language is limited to our sight, okay, to some degree. That means we can't give emptiness, like we give it a word, but there's no image. So there's hollow words in the dictionary. Words that literally nobody can give a definition, but there's been an attempt. Most definitions in the dictionary, I think, are just how people are responding to it. But I think there's a sort of shift that the human being, whatever system that repeats, I feel people outgrow their environments. And when they outgrow their environments, they have two choices. Either they add a new dimension, or either the self approaches the moment anew, or they go into a new part of the world, you know? You know how many people as I speak are traveling between countries trying to start new lives? It's kind of fascinating to think about it. You know, it's kind of like you know what it is? We human beings are like bees. And let me tell you why. Not only because we have like the implication of a hive mind, as someone had suggested in one of these chat sections, and it's pretty much an attempt to explain the psychology of a beehive. You see, the bee goes and it sits on one flower, pollen sticks to its feet, it goes to another flower, and it pollinates and whatnot. And so you kind of see human beings that are traveling all around the world. They're doing the same thing, but they're doing it with their language, with the presence of their mind, with their ideology, with their communication. So technically, we should all consider ourselves as like, just like bees in the same beehive, human beings of the same species. Now, different bees have different intentions. And when I look at life, I see all of it is going towards some infusion. It's as if somebody was going to say, what is the mind of the planet thinking? I would tell you, it is, I think there's an intelligence present, as Terence McKenna would say, another tenant in the room. I think that tenant is not an individual being. And I think we appear to be. And you know what's more intense? It's the hexagonal pattern in beehives. The hexagon. Life lives for life, which kinda, in a very poetic way, makes history imagine every experience of every human being. It inevitably contributes to some other human being. That means whether you live a solo life or not, you are playing one part of this theater of life. Imagine it's a Shakespearean play. Last night was another day. This life used to be another life, and all life used to be another life. And we are traveling through a mind where the edges we cannot find. We can find one edge though, and that is the edge of the mind and its connection to matter. It is easy to feel you're an individual in this life. It is easy to feel you may have opponents, you may have enemies, you may have forces of resistance. But one day it will dawn on you, in the darkest hour most likely. Or if you have seen the light before, perhaps dawn will just come. You will see every person you have ever known, everything you have ever seen, all moments of life. They have been glimpses. It's as if every moment has come and lived and done its performance and left. And when I look at my past, I see just my various performances. And I also see how life moved. And so the inseparability of the mind and the moment, your mind is being your moment right now. That means every person you have in some sense been kind or cruel to, you have been intense or gentle with, you will see that it's as if you were living in your own meaning. That's the thing about the mind. That means unless you reach pure silence and stillness, I feel the person can't see anything other than who they are first. You know, I wondered, why is it that one day I wake up and I feel like life is really long? And there's days that I wake up and I feel life is very short. And then I've asked myself why, and it's as if the mind is looking at reality at different angles, but the mind is not it's a field. That has been my greatest conclusion of it. It's a field that's watching. It's a watching field. I feel our minds are cameras of higher dimensions. I think we're reaching a point in history where human beings, probably we need a couple people to get it going, but soon we'll realize that if we can't see a better self, there's no point of seeing a better world. If you can't see a better self, you know why? Because there's two options. Either you won't help the world, or you'll sacrifice yourself for the world. And both are efficient outcomes. I mean, sacrifice is inevitable. I mean, the last moment of your life, I mean, is technically when your whole life's been your sacrifice. But I'm saying, like, think about it. We live how long? Like 100 years. And we have been walking in a civilization that technologically we clap very proudly. But in regards to the architecture, in regards to the quality of the lives of people, I thought we escaped the jungle to no longer be in savageness. But in the concrete jungle, the savageness has just transformed into psychology. Do you see? There's intensity and intimidation walking the fields of this world, you know? And And what does that mean? That means chaos and order are both members of your civilization. But think of it this way. This is the situation now. This is why I'm saying right now we're kind of the pioneers of the next advanced civilization, really. We are pioneering it. We don't realize it. We think we're just simple people living meaningless lives, not realizing we are, in our every decision, kind of moving the brush of history. History is painting something. I honestly feel human beings are like different colors on this kind of universal canvas. And so consciousness is very powerful. Consciousness is literally how one world is also aware of its reflection. It's when a world is aware of its reflection that endless species are born. There was this thing, I remember there was this thing where there was this book that I read, and there was this kid who, this like bear that was possessed by some demon or something, and this bear had gone and destroyed all the tribes, done some messed up thing. And this kid had survived, and he was this little kid. This was a book I read when I was 15, maybe. I don't even remember the name of the book. But there was this little kid, and the little kid's hiding inside a tree, barely having found some sort of food, and is kind of shocked and devastated. And the kid constantly remembers the wisdom of his ancestors. His life suddenly has moved to a different intensity. And there's a moment at the end of the book where the kid, suddenly the bear comes and to chase the kid, and the kid has no way of defeating this berserk giant bear. It's suddenly an avalanche or something happens, and the bear dies by nature's hand. Do you know, it was this concept that nature defends through the context of reality. You see it in the most intense character development in various shows around the world. What is the character development? There's a character that's likable, decent person, suddenly goes through intensity. And then from that intensity rises. Do you know? It's as if like chaos reaches a point where the person is afraid, then the cornered animal rages. And that's the thing. Our animal instincts are the backup for the hopelessness of our civilization. That means it's like if there's a wild animal and you gotta fight a wild animal, you gotta fight a wild animal like a wild animal. Do you see? But when you, for example, fight human beings, you shouldn't fight human beings like wild animals. Because human beings have the faculty of mind. That means when a person realizes the power of communication, that it is all about imagery. That is the secret. I am telling you, communication is the most advanced art form. It doesn't matter in what medium it is. But communication in the sense that it's not just a character in a story, it's the inner realms finding a common world to build something in. That means whenever in history has there been an opportunity for 8 billion beings to share their inner realms with the world they know. And somehow when I look at, you know what it is? For me, the internet is like incredible. When I truly saw its value, I was like, it's an invisible chess piece. You know how in chess, when your pawn reaches the end of the map, the end of the other side, it can become any piece. So you can choose, for example, a queen. And that was like the internet was suddenly out of nowhere. Now we have 2 queens in civilization. We have nature's intelligence, but we also have this cyberspace world which we indirectly through social media are building, you know? In some of my talks, I've kind of spoken about cyberspace being the next evolution, where our psychology shifts. If evolution is a shift changing our psychology, it would literally change our psychology in accordance to the information we get. So right now, we can say, while the person is alive, you are a moment of being, receiving information physically. But when the person moves beyond this, it doesn't mean you stop being a moment of being. It just means the physical component is not there and the rest is unknown. It's as if you suddenly become a dream to yourself, which you wake up from. At least poetically, I can say this because I mean it's just in my dreams I've kind of experienced death. And in no way I'm saying dreaming in death is the same as actual in life, but I'm saying it's kind of like there's a sort of detachment from what you were holding on to and what you actually wanted the world to give you. There's a humbling force in life. If you push the moment too much, you'll see it act. It's the person whose inner realms is oblivious to the outer realms. That person, in some sense, I mean, of course, any person can get it. You can say the more tired you get, I mean, check it out. When you wake up in the morning, your attention starts off in the outer realms, but as you get tired at night, you just want to go sleep. You're like, I'm done with the day. So then it ends in the inner realms. So, how would we get 8 billion human beings to share the hidden life behind their eyes? Not to share it, but to share the contributions, the explorations, the findings. To become 8 billion hunter gatherers of our inner realms, you know? I feel attention is where everything has ever happened from the beginning of life. From everything I right now consider that I know, it is all present in a beam of attention, and they can be evoked in that. And the attention is like a double-edged blade. That means while I kind of sometimes when I speak or I'm physically moving and doing something, in my inner realms I am also simultaneously doing something. But in the inner realms, I'm not like, it's not like the body. It's not like the physical body. It's like your mind is identifying with the image it is passing through. You know, most people think they have thoughts. No, you can't have a thought, you know, because thoughts are not things you can have. They're not things. Thoughts are images. They are the signals you receive as an antenna, as a walking antenna on this earth. And in your stillness, your antenna signal gets increased. I'm just telling you, whoever you are, whenever you think about a problem, just be still and silent and just sit somewhere. Sometimes I have this attitude. I wouldn't know. I don't know if it's something to encourage others or not. I still don't know. But I'm going to share it. It's sometimes I've come in a moment and any game I start or anything, any practice I do, I move one tiny thing at the beginning to make the moment a bit my own, like, I don't know how to say it. Sometimes I sit in the oddest places for meditation. You know, I sit places like sometimes I remember once I sat on a ground somewhere where it's not conventional, right? You know, like I'm a person who, I mean it, I mean this is not, I'm not saying this is again a good or bad thing. I'm just sharing that I sometimes have an attitude that matter is matter. That means really what is separating the validity of your biological body with the validity of, for example, another object. I mean, isn't this fascinating? This mind that we have, we can move our hand, but we can't move a cup just in the direction of our hand. Do you know? But when we are looking at it, literally the same attention that looks at your right hand, imagine, is the same attention that looks at that cup. Do you see what I mean? So what is the separation from it? Like sensation wise, just because you know, like touch your right hand with your left hand, and it's kind of like wondering which hand touched which, you know? I feel it's rhythmic. I think the advanced communicators of the future generations, they will simply all you require is a notebook. Just buy a notebook and find a pen that you trust. And this may sound strange, but just, I don't know, choose a pen you trust. And don't watch life until you see the opportunities arise and then take efficient steps. That's the only way. It's literally like, you know how in certain video games the per character has to wait for the obstacle to pass, then jump over another obstacle? Sometimes in life there is this patience factor, which is literally, again, as Sun Tzu was saying, the balance between earth and heaven. It may sound strange. I don't know if it was based on my upbringing of being introduced to the concept of God, but whether it was shaped or not, I felt the world was big. And if a person saw an ant, then what could be looking at man, right? And so the ant can't fathom, the ant can't understand why we choose politicians, why we vote for politicians. The ant is, its dimensionality is so it deviates. There's, let's call it multidimensional, there's a dimensional deviation, a deviation from the dimension. Think of it this way, that every day happens once, and it's worth writing whatever that seems to be like a unique or uncommon signal received from the mind. Sometimes it's the details that kind of hide the secrets of the universe. It's sometimes sudden intuitive feelings. I'll give you an example. Long story short, I was in London, Ontario. It was this accommodation kind of setting. I find myself at this kind of like, not that I find myself, it was like, pretty much I'm partying in London, Ontario. I'm in this accommodation area where it's this accommodation hallway. I have these two close friends at the time, Ole and Dane. And so I remember I just get this feeling, and they would always leave their room and door open, and I got this feeling to just go. And I was like, I drank a lot, and I felt like suddenly going in the room and listening to Immortal Technique. I don't know why. It was just that random moment where I'm like, I need to listen to Immortal Technique right now. So I remember I went to kind of Ole's room and I was listening to Immortal Technique. And then these four incredibly, and I was much younger at the time, these four incredibly attractive girls just walk into the room. And first thing I feel is like I stopped listening to Immortal Technique, and when I was while I was like I wasn't, how would I say it? I'm in the room listening to Immortal Technique, and these four girls come in, and suddenly I get this alarming sense. I just instantly, I'm like, okay, why are people in Dane and Ole's room? Because they're friends. And so two of the girls out of nowhere, just out of nowhere, it was kind of funny when I look at it, out of nowhere, they just come straight up to me and they start just talking to me like flirtatious and unbelievably, right? Do you know what I mean? Like it was like a Oscar level attempt performance, but there was no acting experience. So these two girls are talking to me. Then I see the other two girls are moving around in the room. And instantly I tell them, get out of the room, get out of the room. And I was, keeping in mind, I was relatively intoxicated. What happens is I kick them out of the room. I tell them, oh no, you're too many in this room and you're touching stuff, you gotta get out of this room, right? And I see later on, like Dane and Ole come, and I noticed the girl wrote a note while the two of them were talking to me. The girl wrote this note, and it was like something like, I don't know. I think the note was like "shut up" or something. It was to Dane and Ole, and later on we realized these were. Later on we realized these girls they were living downstairs, and Dane and Ole, for some reason at that time, dubstep was popular. So at like 8 p.m. on a university campus, they were blasting dubstep. But it was kind of messed up, right? It was pretty messed up. And I saw those girls later that night, and I had this intense confrontation where it was literally like, I don't know, I felt like Batman. you know? But it was an intense moment, and there was just this intuition that there was false, it was it was my inner realms that was giving, there were signals arising from my inner realms for my own action in the moment. And I don't know how to say that. It was like literally the same time I was experiencing that and listening to Immortal Technique, and then suddenly getting a sense there's too much movement happening while those two are talking to me. I tell them to all leave. But it was kind of like intense. Then I realized the nature that sometimes beauty can be cruel. They were really beautiful, the girls. Like, but I'm telling you, they had a messed up nature, so incredibly ugly inside. You know, you know. Yeah, my experience in London, Ontario was short-lived, though, guys. I don't know, there was an intuitive feeling. Many moments in my life, there has been as if the inner realms have moved first than my outer realms. Then I've kind of felt like a shamanicness to the moment. It was as if shamanism was a spice. That spice was all over the present moment. Sometimes I was thinking, I don't know how many people have gone to these spice markets, like in India, and I've gone one to Iran as well. And you see all these people, like the spice owners, like, yo, I got spices. you know. And the spice owner brings out different spices, throws them out, takes a tray and puts a bits of all the different spices, whatever amount of whatever spice, and then brings it to kind of promote his merchandise or whatever. He's like, gotta sell this spice. you know, being an entrepreneur is a spicy ordeal. So, so anyways, guys, the guy takes a little bit of every different spice. And I was thinking, when people are kind of communicating, when people are speaking, when there's these debates or ideology, or when we look at the constitution of the personality, it's like the same spice thing in the tray, different spices, but it's not different spices, it's different experiences of life and how they translate it as something that could echo forth. That means I think so many people are just stumbling through phenomenology as attention. But I'm telling you, it took us 4 billion years to evolve to have a consciousness to be able to direct ourselves. So at some point, we're kind of like in this meaningless place, but at the same time, we have this free will and consciousness to direct ourselves. So what it would mean is that we would kind of try, because in our inner realms, like literally, I can imagine myself owning like a robot factory, but it would literally be millions and millions of dollars, which is not around me. So let's say for now. But I'm telling you, it's like in my inner realms, the cost was free. So your mind gives you a very cost efficient way to kind of manage risk. The mind is an activity. That's the clue. It's moving. It's life, right? And so it's pretty much the question is, how far can life describe itself? I honor all academia. You don't know. I honor the educational system to such a degree where I want to see it change. You know? Humanity must commit. Either the species is aware of itself or it is not. It has to choose. And being in the middle is suffering. If we choose to be chaotic, we in some sense bring the ultimate chaos, or if we choose to be ordered, we have to bring the ultimate order. You see? Now, this order is not a one-man thing, and any human being, let me tell you, there's a law to nature. It's called the law, I don't know, in my reality, it's called, I have kind of termed it as, I don't know how to tell you. It's like the law of dimensions. It's as if before human beings are communicating to one another, dimensions are communicating to one another. And sometimes you see that even if a human being attempts to take ultimate form of power, they're going to eventually see that ultimate form of power is going to be at a lonely peak, and it's going to be self-isolation. That means the karma of ultimate power is being trapped in an ivory tower, where eventually it's like any wrong thing you do. Think of it this way. Any human being hurt, something is attacking your species. Any human being that is suffering, something is causing suffering for your species. Do you see the emergence of this collective mind? The hive mind resurfaces. And it's going to resurface through a renaissance of communication, I find. I feel that there's too many artists hidden behind their eyes. It's like the other thing is, what are people waiting for? That's another important question. What is the human being waiting for when every moment, in some sense, to some degree, happens once, really? You know? That's the cool thing about time, because there's this always entrance into the new. There's this ability to constantly see things from anew. That means a sort of oscillation from something having infinite value, and then you come down to a sort of space, the emptiness. And emptiness is the center of the point that is holding all the angles of reality. That means emptiness to our dimension doesn't mean emptiness to higher dimensions. Just like because the ant doesn't see someone bake an apple pie. The veils are there. The veils between worlds of intelligence and the authorization, the internal authorization. There's an internal authorization that you give yourself, and then there's an internal authorization where you feel as a command from your inner realms. And I'm not saying as a command, it's more like a burst of action, you know? Someone the other day in the chat section was talking about downloading information or something. Let me tell you, it's kind of it's not per se downloading information. It's kind of like how you're being the information on some level, and you just it comes to the distance of your conscious mind. That means psychologically considering, the dimensions are not like space and time. They're between the conscious and unconscious. That means psychology really doesn't care about, I personally think, doesn't really care about time. And it shouldn't, because it is there to wonder about the known and the unknown. So the human being, their personality, everything, whoever you are, you can suddenly wonder about what is known and unknown about yourself. And how much of it requires the world to move and how much of it requires you to move. And then you conduct yourself until the civilization updates. You know what that means? That means we have to just advance the skill of the human being. As we advance the skill of the human being will experientially know there is something more important than a sort of scattered, broken mirror of truth on the ground. Every environment has a nature. There is a level of pure simplicity where there is no resistance to the world or the self. And in that state, I've called that, I've wrote a book on it called The Inventor's Sphere. And it was about this, I poetically had kind of said there's this sphere in the universe where all the designs, all the geometry to worlds, every invention ever made in any civilization, everywhere all over the galaxy, it all comes from this giant inventor's sphere. Do you see? That means the inventive urge is coming from the inventor's sphere. And it's not like rays from the sun. There's just a sphere, there is a state where man is not a knower of knowledge anymore. And when you're no longer the knower of knowledge, you experientially see. So you experientially navigate if there were any higher dimensions. They're not idea based. If you go with an idea, you just see the reverse of it, and most people get scared. Most people go into, this is why even Carl Jung was speaking about the anima and the animus, because the mind has a freedom the body doesn't. So most human beings, because of free will, they feel that because the mind is free, the mind can define. But then what about the body? So I feel it's like we will eventually move to a point where identity will no longer be an object, it will no longer be a subject, it will be a rhythm, it will be a movement. It will be where the attention goes next. And so your attention is the most important thing in this world. And eventually, I'm telling you, there's a point where you stop searching anymore in mysticism. You know why? Because you realize what you're looking for is not something you can hold. That when we speak about mystical experience, that has to do with the transformation of the inner constitution of how the outer constitution is held. That means the I thought, not everybody has an iPhone, but everybody has an I thought. Everybody has this sense of who their attention in the moment as a self is pretty much your ego, or your I thought, or call it whatever, you know. it's as if like I'm kind of thinking, what does this world need? And for a first time I thought, is it a utopia? Is it a soft, kind of gentle playground? And I was like, that's too good to be true. Then I wondered, what is the next option? What's the next option with a civilization that is kind of, there's endless battles of chaos and order in the civilization? And then I remember there's this strategy in military, both in military tactics, and it's kind of, I think it comes from, it's I don't know if it's rooted in Machiavellian ideology, but the whole notion is, I think it's not Machiavellian idea, it's just this ancient saying, and they would say that the enemy of my enemy is my friend. So I was thinking human beings are fighting each other. And then I wondered, when do we see world peace? And strangely, in one movie in this lifetime, I saw a strange solution to it. I saw the algorithm to world peace. Let me say an algorithm. Okay? And the algorithm is that the conflict is internal. We are like a species in civil war. Okay? We're a species in civil war. And because we're constantly praising our individualism, this civil war may continue. And the civil war is occurring not physically per se, it does lead to physicality, but it begins first in the minds of people. So I kind of realized what is really the enemy is how people never see each other's eyes, they see what they see in the other. So it is the concept of the enemy. So I realized that these two human beings should find themselves in a state where the concept of the enemy doesn't exist. Okay? Now I was thinking, how do we do this? In the movie Independence Day, these aliens attack. Humans overcome the obstacle, and the president's like, we celebrate our Independence Day, and everybody in the world's like, yeah, you know? But, what did that mean? That means the moment there came a bigger challenge that was more bigger, more intimidating than any human being. That means, imagine human beings fighting among each other, then an alien civilization attacking us. At that point, we'd be like, let's get this thing off our turf, then we'll, settle our disputes. So then it becomes the species is united. So I was like, literally, the children of the future generations need to be, kind of feel like they have a challenge that their species needs to go through. And it's the task of the writers in the future. For now, I would say a writer to kind of follow, for the future generations to follow. I think every human being should know about this this writer, Hajime Isayama, if I remember correctly. Hajime Isayama. And it is the final stance. It's literally like the human being that somebody said poetically, everybody's walking to the grave, so you shouldn't be cruel to people. But on some level, if everybody's walking to the grave, that means there's the glow of the candle is still here. So for me, I feel that it should be through two ways. Literally, there's two ways to Mahasamadhi out of conception. I think it's either infinite speed or it's pure stillness. That means after the body dismantles, I think it's either of these states that potentially could occur. You know, I honestly think we are simultaneously existing with other civilizations in the same place where our civilization is. That means, I'm not joking, guys. I feel there is many dimensions living in the moment. And this I could kind of usher this in as kind of Mr. Within's kind of neo-metaphysics, where I'm saying the present moment is on its own. That means that's just pure unknown. It's like you can't really make a philosophy out of pure unknown. It's like, what do you believe in? It's all pure unknown. It's like, okay, that was short. Time is paint. Language is paint. We are a dance between images of two different textures. Like it's mind-boggling. Everybody is instantly getting experience of this. Look at any object in the room, and now if you wanted to move the idea of this object, you have total freedom to move it in many ways. So 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 Jeff Hoskins, I don't know if you're asking a question or you're just commenting. Um, There is, I don't know if you're familiar with Avicenna's metaphysics. Avicenna, he was a polymath, I believe. Avicenna in his metaphysics, he kind of says that metaphysics is a science. He's that dude in history saying metaphysics is a science because he says there is the imposition of an existent subject. That means you set out to do something. No. I'm just saying that. Yeah. So Jeff, I'm just saying that God. When you say God is the only way, of course, let me tell you, is God a concept? That's the question. And if it's not a concept, do you see? So what way is there? Do you see? I'm saying there is a glitch in the system of time. In a linearized time-based system, there's a glitch. So in Avicenna's metaphysics, it's just the pointer that there's this. I don't know how to say it. I mean, I think usually through images, so it takes me some time to put them into words. So far, how far I've been acquainted with Avicenna, his metaphysics is kind of saying that the moment you set out to find out something, the setting out is suggesting this sort of existent factor. That means he's endlessly considering. I think he's literally considering science. His mind. He's that person in history whose mind somehow through some subjective lens. If you ask Avicenna, I think because he was a polymath, he could see it in all of them. You see, he could see a pattern in all of them. So Jeff says, "Did you see the article about all of the galaxies in the universe are being pulled towards something in the middle of the universe?" Yeah, but the interesting thing is, on a sphere in a vacuum, is very hard for us to locate things. I think that there is this view that in trillions of years or something, I think it's trillions of years, maybe billions. I don't know. In a certain amount of time, the Andromeda galaxy and the Milky Way galaxy are going to intersect. But when you look at it on a more astronomical cost, like from a very like outside of space way, we are the I don't know, say it. It's like the galactic clusters are getting close, but they're also pushing away. So in trillions of years, those people in the Andromeda galaxy are not going to see in the Milkomeda or Andromilky, I don't know. Andromilky galaxy, you know? Oh man. I don't know why people are bringing milk into stars, you know, star names, but I don't know. Milk advertising is galactic, guys. Who knew? These milk companies have outdone themselves. They've named the the galaxy based on milk, you know? I don't know, physical reality, the laws of the nature, whether we personify it or not, because they're a movement beyond our way of linearizing it, we can instantly see it as a sort of unknown mind, you know? I feel there is something more. I feel that our minds are actually, I think we just like how we have two eyes that see the same. I feel uh, we are in two dimensions. Our mind has one leg in one dimension, the other leg in the other dimension, you know? There was this guy named Swami Krishnananda, guys. Somebody asked him, yo man, what's religion? And he was like, religion is God remembering himself. That means the person who truly is experiencing God, there is no concept of God. How could there be? That means if God is there, why do you need the concept? Why do you need it? Why do you need it? You see, I think I think faith was the backup system for the religion, for the religious ideology. Let me tell you why. Because everything can be lost, but faith is the only thing that is literally its existence is not to be lost. Do you see? So I think at the end of it, we're just creatures of sight, and we have inclinations to how reality has uh, how waves of information have just hit us throughout the days as we've taken laps around the sun, you know. So anyways, guys, I feel we have reached the end of the talk. Actually, let me see if I can read something. So I would ask you this, Jeff. I was just reading your question in the chat section. Does nature have a personality? Does energy have a personality? So guys, anybody can answer this in the chat section, but I'm also directing it to you, Jeff. Do you see what I mean? It's attachment to the language still. The language is more real than the experience, so the language has to be there for the person to be convinced of the experience. Do you see? So there is this thing, like for example, there was the Sufi mystic Rumi. He said silence is the language of God, all else is poor translation. Okay, so so if energy has a personality, does that mean you are God right now talking to me, Jeff? Like I'm just responding to your comment in the chat section, but out of curiosity, do you feel you're God right now talking to me? Because if you are God's will, that means there is no Jeff, there's no Mr. Within, there's just God's will. So see that energy, I think the most poetic thing about religion was that it's inconceivable. That means many religious traditions I've gone to, and I've asked them, hey man, what's the soul? And you know what they tell me? They say it's the secret of the creator. That's what they say. It's the secret of the divine will. So if you feel you are God right now, then in some sense, I don't know how to say it. Oh my God! No, I'm joking. I feel any experience beyond the language threshold will no longer have a concept, but there is this primal mover, and this primal mover, you can call it God, but it surpasses in dimensionality the language. The language you use is a shadow for the actual experience of it behind your eyes. So you see what I'm saying? That's the inner realms. In your inner realms, you're like, there's no Jeff, it's just God here, bro. But I'm telling you, that's the thing. That's your inner realms. But the outer realms, do you think a glass cup cares about my belief system or ideology? You see, it's the objective phenomena is empty. The ink on the paper is ink on the paper. That means even if we acknowledge that revelation is true, let's say that's true. But then the eyes that read the words in scripture, isn't it everybody has a different DNA? Isn't it everybody has different eyes? Do you see what I mean? That means we extract meaning, we imbue life in phenomena. So you will always feel like that imbuer of the phenomena is the free will. That means I feel language is the last staircase before paradise's staircase. Like language is I'm telling you, your inner realms are like weather; they come and go. You know. Jeff, technically, you mean you gave it you? Guys, let me tell you, if we're decent people, I don't bring up the concept of God when it's. Let me tell you, it's when I bring it up when there is an angle that I feel is You see, it's pretty much this: either we're all ocean or we're drops. Okay, we're all separate drops or we're oceans. That has always been the thing. I'm saying you're being both of them. In front of your eyes, you're being a drop. Behind your eyes, you're being an ocean. And that ocean, because someone's asking the question in front of your eyes, you perhaps have no other word to call it other than God. But I'm telling you, nature was here before words were. Nature is a revelation on its own. It's the primary source of movement. It's even if there was a God, its language is how nature is moving. Do you see? I think we have to be ushered into an era where we can acknowledge we are not language. Then we will stop playing ideological costume games. You know? That means in a changing entropic nature, what can you be? What can you be? It's like, I'm not who I was 20 years ago. Then who am I? So in the mystery of not even knowing who we are, I don't even know who God is for. Where's the who? Who is the who? Who is the person? Do you see what I mean? Guys, these conversations are very School of Athens like. We can keep it going in the chat section. You know? Jeff, I am telling you, honor your inner realms and also honor the simplicity of the outer realms. The complexity of life is behind us. The colors, the language we use. Do you know? That means I was like, every day I'm waking up, and then after some point I'm like, who am I? Which person am I? Which version am I? Yesterday's me? Am I the day before yesterday's me? Am I that me before? And I'm like, what is this endless, kind of metamorphosis into these new selves, senses of being? And I realize it is the relationship we have with time. Do you know? That means who were you before language, before you learned language? And I feel that's where the mystery, true mysticism lies. It's beyond language. I think we have to instantly build a geometrical language. That way, every person's philosophy would be a geometrical design, you know? And then it would no longer be a sort of, do you know what I mean? Imagine a world of advanced communicators. How incredible, how efficient would that world be? The mind has started war. Perhaps that's where peace is from. We can get peace. It's where the mind is, where the attention of the archetype that the human being kind of walks through is. So anyways, guys, This is the end of the talk. I'm going to open it up to Q&A for 10 minutes. Feel free to ask a question. Anybody who's listened so far, thanks for listening. I encourage people to ask questions, and questions that are experiential. I would advise or any question, whatever. But anyways, guys, blessings. Write your question, and I'll step out of cyberspace. Okay, so Diluted Mutiny asks the question. Let me just put the Q&A thing so people know. Morality. Oh, you're asking. Okay. So, Diluted Mutiny, considering your question maybe is directed at me. So my perspective on morality, it's a lens. And the archaic morality was good, bad. The modern morality will be efficient, inefficient. That's it. And efficient is win-win when you realize the value of the species. Okay. So Aziz says, what is yoga? Okay, so Aziz says, what is yoga? Yoga, the word means to join, it means union. In my view, the way I've comprehended it is that we open our eyes as an individual object, and somehow there's this mysterious mind, and through yoga, it's the union of, in some sense, the individual consciousness with the collective consciousness. But it reaches a point where they become inseparable. So the journey fades into a resolution in the middle. Yoga has a physical dimension, which is very crucial, but it is that it also has a philosophical kind of dimension, and the philosophical dimension is just the way it's kind of, how would I say it? It's like similar to the anima mundi. There's the dance of Purusha and Prakriti in the moment. How there is the Atman and the Parabrahman. How there is an individualism, an individual intent, and how there's a recognition that the signals that emerge in your mind are not arising from an individual situation. So, diluted says, how would one go about abandoning, diluted mutiny says, how would one go about abandoning their beliefs and starting new, forgetting everything from the past? Yoga, simply, Mr. Within would say, is when you realize why light is in your eyes. So I would say that here's the thing, ask yourself, literally think of it this way. You are right now being the memory of your future self, poetically. Okay? Right now, this moment is being a memory for your future self. So if you want to kind of experience the moment, of course you can just, I would say, sit still and silent for 10 to 20 minutes every day and just wonder, what is this life? You know? Um, Jeff, if you're, this is unique, but I would say take a message to Sadhguru and ask him if the soul is endlessly incarnating, okay, is enlightenment an infinite thing, you know? Sadhguru, of course, I don't know. I think he's struggling between billionaire psychology and ancient yogic compassionate psychology. But Sadhguru is definitely, he's a very insightful person. I've learned a lot from his videos. So, I don't know, deluded mutant, I don't know what to say to you. Honestly, the thing is, in my life, I've realized there is a novelty factor to the moment. You'll just notice it, and once you realize your own mortality, the fact that everybody dies, you'll be like, okay, well, what am I waiting for? And then you realize you're the only one who can see through your eyes. Nobody can see your problems. I'm not joking. Unless you communicate your problems, nobody can see it. That's why people even go to the doctor, you know? When their own attempt to solve the problem has kind of not worked out, you know. So I don't know. I think it's a good thing to wonder if enlightenment is an endless phenomenon, you know. And I think the answer is going to be the inconceivable. It's pretty much going to be the inconceivable, the answer. So Sadhguru's probably going to be like, what do you want me to say? Nah, Sadhguru's not going to say that. So, but I'm telling you, I don't know what Sadhguru say, but let me see if I can make a prediction. Um, I think poetry will be the response. I think poetry. Um, Not really, Jeff. I I've just seen some videos of him. Oh, okay. I think they call it Mahasamadhi. That's such a cool way of saying it. So I'm just gonna I'm just gonna read your comment. So guys, Jeff says um, his wife's soul vanished from enlightenment to somewhere. Guys, we have to honor nature, of course. I mean, every person's memory was a contribution to how far we've come, really. I think after some point we're going to realize we're creatures who have become aware more than subjects, and it's just going to be experiential rhythms. So that's why I'm saying we will have nowhere left to go. Imagine right now all the way people want to be people, and imagine all their desires were met and all personalities kind of fruition and whatnot. After that, how long can we just go in the eyes of a person? I feel eventually, I'm talking about maybe like 6,000 years from now, maybe, where we're going to wonder about, okay, what's beyond individual existence or experience. And I feel unless we have the fearlessness to study the multidimensionality of the self and the world, we'll never kind of realize, you know. For me, there's you might not believe it, but sometimes when I even enter a room or anywhere, I don't know why, but sometimes I've had moments where I've wanted to enter a room and I just felt I had to bow to the room. No logic, no reason, no image, just a feeling as if there was a presence there. I remember seeing this picture. This picture was a Facebook meme. It showed this guy who was in the city and he had a suit and a suitcase, and it showed the guy had gone to India on a mountain, and on the bottom it was a meme and it said, I don't know, let's call the guy Bob. I don't remember what the guy's name was. It was like Bob went to find himself in India. Literally in the meme, and it said something like that. And then the next scene you see Bob has this giant beard and a staff and he's walking. He's walking only to realize that he will come back to himself. Do you know what I mean? He goes to the cave and he sees inside the cave is himself with the suit. That means it's like a lot of things. First, we run away from it only to come back to it no longer the same kind of person. So I would say it's definitely a journey. India is a very unique place. When I went there, I went to Rishikesh for 2 months in this place called Niketan Ashram. Very simple place. And when I was there, I don't know, I just went with my intuition. It was like, that's the thing. Let your intuition take the wheel when you're journeying, when you're exploring, to some degree. So, guys, if I hope my answers to your questions have been okay. Okay, so nice. Javi says, do we really need any gurus to learn about the potential that we all possess? Let me give you an answer. Let me give you an interesting answer. I don't know where I heard the story, but somebody evidently, I don't know, it's a story, okay? I don't know its validity, but it's a story. The story was like somebody comes to Buddha and it's like, yo, Buddha, is there going to be another Buddha? Like after you? And Buddha says no, because Buddhism would have spread so far that people no longer need a Buddha. Do you see? That means people function at such an advanced state, they don't need a teacher. You only need a teacher if you're behind. You know? And really, you gotta at some point realize we're all on a rock in the middle of nowhere, and most people in their subconscious mind are freaking out to how much void and emptiness there is, and that's why they have to kind of escape into some sort of intense idealism and ideological perspectives. Because really, we are like, what do we do with emptiness? And we realize it is as if the manifestation changes. There's these archetypes in some sense, or let me say it like this. Shiva, Vishnu, Brahman. Shiva is like the destructive dimension. Vishnu is the maintainer. And Brahman is the creator. And if you think about it, these are modes that the attention moves through. There's some modes where the person feels it's like less is more. Certain moments, more is less, you know? So I would say no. The concept of a guru was because there was no internet. There was nothing to pass down like some sort of echo of the thought. I think really there is no such thing as the outer guru. The outer guru's whole point. I remember I said this when I was speaking in Iran in the summer. I went to visit, and I was speaking in Iran, and you know what it was? I remember I was in a crowd in this room. It's literally, you can go see it. It's a talk 438, but it's in a different language. And in that moment, I literally told the group of people who were calling them masters or something. They were like, they were introducing them as Ostad, Ostad, Ostad in Farsi means like master or something. And then I said, the only guru, the only task of the outer guru is to give you a mirror so you can see the inner guru. Because if you follow the outer guru, you will have to, for the rest of your life, follow a stranger. Some random person. But if the outer guru can make you realize the inner guru, then you realize really your true teacher is what has been with you from the beginning, your moment. Your moment is your true teacher, your true guru. Your guru is phenomena in your experience of your moment, really. Jeff, you can also start a vlog or something. But no, maybe that might distract you from nature or something. So anyways, guys, I hope these responses I've been giving did some justice to the questions. If there isn't any more questions, guys, I can exit cyberspace. You know, Jeff, there's this quote where I don't know your background, but there's this quote from Meister Eckhart where he says, "The same eyes I see God are the same eyes God sees me." The inseparability, like they say, meditation, you no longer need to meditate when you see the inseparability of the individual activity with the cosmic activity, and at that point you will mature as a being to a point where your archetypes are not based on the person. It is based on what can be. You know, it's based on the potential, really. So the inseparability of the individual activity and the cosmic activity is the end of meditation, and Swami Krishnananda says this. So, Jeff, I would say safe travels, and everybody, thanks for listening. I think I'm going to land the plane. And as always, rise, mankind, rise. Namaste.